Amazing. Thank you, Christy. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Folks can just let me know if you're able to see this. Yes. Okay, perfect. Um, so before we get started, I wanted to share that all of the courses and resources that we're sharing today, and also just way beyond what we're sharing today, are available on NDTC's website with the creation of an account. So I'm going to pause for a moment here. Everyone take out your phones, scan the QR code just to make sure you have the link to do that afterwards. Or if you're on your laptop, you can just type in traindemocrats.org/register. There are so many courses. I want to say close to like 50 courses available for free for Democrats on that website. And they're facilitated by a series of different trainers. So it's a really great way to get all kinds of perspectives from folks with different backgrounds. So highly, highly recommend that. All right. If you need the slide again, it'll be at the end of the presentation. So no worries if you don't get that now. All right, so today we are here to talk about how to develop your campaign's core message. And I love giving this training. I've done this this specific one multiple times. And I think it's not just important to folks who are running for office. It's also important for anyone who's out looking for a job or anyone who is ever trying to convince somebody of something. This is an exercise in storytelling and how to authentically use your experiences to craft a narrative that is so unique and persuasive that you get what you want. Isn't that fantastic? So that's what we'll be talking about today. Again, my name is Vanessa. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a storyteller and a PR strategist by trade. I am based in New York City. I am actually working out of my office today. So if you hear sirens, ambulances, it's just the streets of New York. I sincerely apologize. But so currently I am at a PR agency and I work with clients from nonprofits to local elected officials. And I work a lot with the New York City Reads program, New York City Board of Ed, and also with the Housing and Homeless Department here. So a little bit of services specifically to electeds, which I always love, and also city services. And then separately, I work on a lot of our nonprofit and issue advocacy areas, anywhere from LGBTQ justice to racial justice, to access to safe and fair voting. So really excited to be here with you all. I also had a weird stint as a Muppet publicist on Sesame Street. So if you're interested in that, we can do a little random Q&A at the end about that. People always get a kick out of that if you're a fan of Elmo. All right. I have my contact info below. I think the best way to connect with me if you're interested is on LinkedIn. You can just search my name, Vanessa Shaw, spelled HSIA, and I'd be happy to connect. All right, so we already did our nifty little introductions. I love when all training teams are kind of on the same page about that. So if you haven't already, drop your name, your office that you're running for in the chat, and where you're joining us from today. We're specifically in North Carolina. And then a couple more training norms. We always ask folks be respectful and then specifically be present. I know we're in the middle of a work day, so if possible, try to mute your notifications, put a do not disturb on your calendar. We always really appreciate that. And then lastly, ask questions and participate. If you drop questions in the chat, I'm pretty good at catching them, even if you're dropping them as I go. So I do my best not to miss any questions there. Wonderful. So our two main learning objectives for the day. Today, we're going to describe the features of an effective core message. I think the best thing you can do for somebody is help them talk about themselves in a way that is meaningful and effective. And that's what we'll be focusing on today. Whether you're running for office this year or you're supporting someone who is running, thinking like a storyteller will get you very far. And then number two, we're going to practice actually developing our core message for a campaign. And if you're not actually running for office, no worries. We'll have you make up one for, I don't know, Ministry of Magic or whatever random office you want to pretend to run for, just to make sure everyone has an opportunity to collaborate and try this out for themselves. All right. So, for our icebreaker today, I would love to know, and this is especially important if you are running for office, what is one pressing issue currently faced by your community? And then, how does this issue connect to the shared beliefs and values of people who live there? Meaning, the economy might be something that's on everybody's mind, right? But how is that uniquely manifesting in your local community? How is that showing up, just as an example? So feel free to take some time and just drop some thoughts into the chat. Doesn't have to be conclusive. Just want to get the conversation going so I can get a better sense of who's here today and what you need out of this training. Okay, so Jonathan says accountability. Yes, that's a big one. Holding elected officials accountable, making sure that folks are actually actively representing the folks that put them into office. Mike says managing growth and the narrow roads in our town. Lots of projects going in, lots of people concerned about the traffic. Absolutely. Economy, cost of housing and food. Yeah, definitely. So we like to start this training this way, just as a reminder that you're here as a trainee, but you come with expertise about your local community. So really lean into that. And you know your community better than I do. And so today it'll be kind of about this collaboration of you bring that knowledge and me helping you craft that into something that you can use for your campaign. All right, so let's start with what is a core message? A campaign core message, first, most important thing you need to know, it has to be short. It is not a speech. It is not a op-ed. It is not a think piece, if you will. It's 3 to 5 sentences, and it's just a statement explaining one, who you are, two, why you're running, and three, why people should support your candidacy. In other words, what makes you unique, what makes you not the other guy, not the other gal, and why now, right? So the question of the who, what, when, where, why, these are all of the things that should be answered by your campaign core message. And we led our icebreaker with asking about what are some of the most pressing issues in your community for that exact reason. You know exactly what issue is important to you. And so now we need to figure out how do you tailor your lived experience to really be that need, fill that need, and be the candidate that can bring about change for everybody. So, a couple of reasons why a core message matters. Number one, it informs voters about the campaign. It tells people that you are running for office. That's really important. Number two, it persuades voters who might be undecided. If they don't know who they're going to vote for, or maybe they don't even know if they want to vote in this election and go through all the trouble of signing up, your core message is hopefully persuasive enough to at least get them to consider. And then number three, preview policy priorities. So instead of coming to somebody and saying, hey, I'm running for school board, anyone can run for school board, right? So what specific policies are you promising? Are you excited to manifest into the community? That makes you different. So giving them a little bit of that preview and having this moment where you can have people start to tie different values to you and to your campaign. That's really what we're trying to do. And then lastly, inspire action among supporters. So not only do we want people to like you, we also want people to like you enough to donate $5 to your campaign or to go door knocking or to phone bank. So it's one thing to raise awareness. It's another thing to make an ask, to have someone care so much that they actually do something on your behalf. And for marketing professionals, that's always going to be the most valuable thing, right? We call it conversion rate, when you get people to click on the link or to sign up for the thing you want them to do. So these are all of the things we hope your core message can receive, so what are words? We hope that these are the things that your core messages can do. And one thing I want to emphasize here that I get a lot of confusion about is the difference between messaging and talking points. Talking points are meant to be something that you kind of read verbatim and then give it your little spin. But the point is that you go to a media interview or you go to an event prepared to say what you're supposed to say. Messaging is different. Messaging is not something that is meant to be repeated word for word every single day. Messaging is a sentiment, it's a feeling. People hear your message, and the message they walk away is like, wow, this person really cares about me, and they really understand what my family is going through right now. That's messaging. That's not talking points because you're not literally saying, hey, I know what your family is going through right now. I'm the only person who understands, right? That's something that you want someone to infer and to take away without you explicitly saying it. So that's the difference between messaging and talking points. And when we talk about a core message, this is literally the message that you will repeat over and over again in different ways through different speeches, through different talking points in order to fully get that sentiment, that feeling across. Because really, voting in politics, it's about feeling. People think it is so intellectual to work in politics, right? To write fancy policies and deliver on those things, but really, good politicians know how to grasp at the heartstrings, and that's what storytelling hopefully can achieve for you. Okay, so different features of an effective core message. Number one, it has to have a connection to your story. In other words, your core message can't be easily replicated by your opponent because it is so uniquely tied to you. It's also tied to your qualifications. Your promise to voters, we talked about that a little bit. And then lastly, an inspiration to act, because you always want to leave people feeling inspired and empowered, and most importantly, feeling like they have agency. The reason why people don't vote, the reason why people feel so disheartened by our current political system is because they feel like their individual voice does not matter. So your job as a candidate is to, through storytelling, convince them otherwise. No, actually, one little vote makes a difference. Actually, one phone call that you make on behalf of this campaign can mean impactful change for your family and your community. All right, so diving in a little bit deeper to these, a connection to your story. The question here is, what defining experiences do you have in common with people in the voter universe? It's a fancy way of asking, why are you running for office, right? There has to be something that happened that moved you to want to do something about that issue. Maybe you come from a family of immigrants and you're tired of the way immigrants are being treated by the current political system. You're tired of the ways that immigrants are, only valued for the work and the hard work ethic that they bring to the country. But we're more than the labor that we produce. We're people with human rights, right? So something that is unique to your story, your upbringing, the things that you have experienced. And I really recommend doing a little journaling to really figure out what your why you're running, exactly what that is by reflecting and going deeper. And then secondly, what shared values and issue priorities does your candidacy give voice to? Meaning, are you representing an ignored minority within the community, right? Like knowing exactly who your constituents are, who will be the people who will, of course, vote for you, no question asked. And then identifying after that, who are your persuadables? Who are people who might be on the fence about going with the example, your immigrant story, right? They might have very confusing beliefs about immigration that some of them have just internalized without realizing. So part of the job of a candidate is also education. You're educating folks before asking them to vote for you. You're educating them on why, and you might be even dispelling myths that they might believe. And so that education piece is also storytelling. So identifying those values and issue priorities that you care about, and then the ones that your constituents, the people you want to represent, care about. And then finding that common tie is going to be really, really important. In academia, there's a term for this. So the story of self is going to be your shared values. The story of us is the story of the shared community. And then we have the larger public narrative, which is formed by these two things. If you're curious, something you can Google if you want to learn a little bit more about that storytelling aspect of running for office. All right, next is your qualifications. So I'm going to say this now. This is not a repetition of your resume and all of the incredible things you've done in your life. This is not a bulleted list of your wins. There will be space for that, but this is not it. This should really answer the question of why should voters trust your leadership? And what relevant experiences and perspectives will you bring to the office? In other words, this answers the question of what makes you unique and authentic. And I know that question feels like a lot of pressure. It's like when someone asks you, hey, like, what are your hobbies outside of work? And suddenly you can't think of a certain thing. Um, this is an opportunity to really dig deeper. So I'm going to come up with an example. Maybe on your resume, you used to be a healthcare worker, right? And maybe you were a registered nurse. And so the point here would not be to list, how long you've worked as a nurse and what are the hospitals you've worked at. We're looking for the qualitative aspect of being a nurse. What were the horrors, right? What were the things that you saw while you were a nurse that made you realize someone needs to do something about this? And maybe that somebody could be me. So finding your why and then finding your qualifications. What are the unique things that make you qualified to support and to fix these issues in your community? And then next is your promise to voters. So what can constituents expect from you once elected to office? How do these policy priorities align with the values of people in the district? And so what everyone is probably tired of, and I think this was briefly mentioned in the chat, is lack of accountability, right? These elected officials make these big, grand promises. None of them were delivered, maybe one thing. And so we understand that being an elected official means making compromises sometimes in order to achieve a bigger, larger goal. However, our constituents and voters, they want to see accountability. They want to see you delivering on your promise. So this is an opportunity to research the office that you're running for. What is actually possible, right? Not making grand promises that we can never deliver on, but actually looking into what are the specific things I would be able to pass as a school board member, or what are some things as city council member I can do for the city in particular. So really thinking about what your promise is. And the how is the bonus, how you plan on delivering your promise. And then lastly, an inspiration to act. What emotional response do you want your core message to evoke? What opportunities does your campaign offer for people to channel emotion into action? So we have that word emotion again. We really want to think with our hearts, not with our brains. That's how you connect with voters. When you give a really good speech, people don't remember word for word what you said. All they remember is how you made them feel. So feeling is so important in effective PR and effective storytelling. And so this is your opportunity to think, okay, what emotion do I want them to walk away with after hearing my core message? What do I also want them to do with that emotion? Is there a call to action I can include? So these are the different parts of a core message. And then we're going to dive a little bit deeper about what is shaping a core message. So first you have your relevant issues. What local concerns are most pressing and what issues can the candidate impact if elected? And then you have your voter universe, the people you want to convince. Who does the campaign need to mobilize? So that includes folks who will absolutely vote for you and folks who might vote for you. Who we're not talking to, especially when you have limited time and limited funds, is people who will absolutely never, ever, ever vote for you. We don't use our resources on those people. It's the people who are already on your side and the people that you can persuade. And then next, to what extent will a candidate need to persuade undecided voters? So how do we persuade the people who are on the line? That's going to be really, really key. And I know that's really key probably for your elections in North Carolina in particular. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And then next is lived experience. What makes you uniquely qualified to lead? And what perspectives in particular do you bring that the office has never had before? So if you are online and you get advertisements on Facebook, on Instagram, There's always a company or a product that's like, this has never been done before. This is the first toilet paper of its kind. This is the first time. If you miss out, you will never have this super cool toilet paper for the first time. So we're kind of doing something like that, but a little less sleazy, right? We're not selling a product, but we are selling beliefs and we are selling ourselves as candidates, as people who can make that change for the community. So leaning into the urgency of it all, this has never been done before. Here are ways that I am uniquely positioned to solve these issues, identifying that need, and then placing yourself in front of the camera and saying, I am the person who can fill that need. That's really the story arc that we're building with our core message. A couple of things to avoid when you're crafting a message. One is you want to avoid vague and or broad issues. So I'll give you an example. Okay, so say your message is like every American deserves the right to vote. That would be a little bit too broad just on its own, right? You would need a couple of things to narrow down specifically what like is voting rights like your thing, or how do you identify American, right? The word American can be very loaded. What does it mean to be American? And then what does the right to vote look like? There's a lot of conservative dog whistling that we hear of, changes to legislative, like to the things that govern how we vote, where they're like, this is technically, you still have the right to vote. We're just making it like a little bit harder, but like you can do it, right? So it's a little bit too vague to be your core message. It has to be more specific to your community. It has to be more specific to naming the villains and naming the issues at hand. A slogan or a catchphrase is also not going to be your core message. Some people really get away with good slogans, and if that's you, that's okay. You can have that as well, but that can't be your core message. Your core message has to be a carefully crafted, meaningful message that people remember because they remember the emotion of it. A slogan is something where people literally remember the words because it's catchy, right? Like, what are some slogans? I can't think of any at the moment, but like, Nike has a very famous slogan, right? So slogans people remember and then they'll think of the brand, but they're not attaching any emotion to that slogan. And that's why we don't want that in our core message. Yes, Susan, just do it. Thank you. I don't know why that's in my mind. We think of that and then we think of the swoosh, but I have no emotions. I feel nothing for Nike, right? They have nice shoes, but I'm not going to vote for them. So a slogan is nice to have, but it's not your core message. All right. And then lastly, a resume. We talked about this already, but having your resume available on your website, if you have one, is great. However, your core message is just not the place to list all of the things you've done in the past. Okay, so we have an example here. Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, who serves Illinois, the 14th district. So before she ran for office, she was a nurse. And she really leaned on her experiences as a registered nurse to talk to her voters. She knows, one, maternal mortality rates are incredibly high in the US, and that's especially true for Black women, especially true for women in impoverished communities. And she really leaned on that. And then she delivered on that promise while in office, when she, I think, led the maternal health caucus. It's not called that specifically, but I remember her really leading the charge on that. And that was really important to her voters who voted for her because that was part of her core message. And so we have a little paragraph here describing some of her work, including strengthening the ACA so everyone with pre-existing conditions, including herself, could find affordable health care. So you see where she fits into that story. She's experienced not having health care, not having the right health care that covers all of her needs. She's experienced being told, nope, sorry, that's a pre-existing condition. You will just have to suffer. And she really used that as part of her campaign. And that's what made her so relatable, so personal. And that's what her voters loved about her. Another example of, someone who ran a similar, not the same, but a similar campaign where they really leaned on their own personal story is AOC, right? She's lost some popularity in New York, I think, within the last year. But when she first ran, people were so excited because it was the first time ever. She was a bartender from Queens, from Brooklyn, right? And that was so relatable for folks. She's working class, she's an immigrant, all of those things. People were like, I see myself in her. So that is just an example of how you can use your story authentically to connect with voters. But AOC is also a lesson, right? She lost some support over recent years because she hasn't continued to deliver on her promise, or she's voted for things in a way that people weren't expecting, according to what her platform was on. So it's a good reminder that people are always listening, people are watching, and so consistency in your core message, what you stand for, has to be there. All right, I'm going to pause a moment here for questions. We're about halfway through the training. If you have any questions about what we just discussed, feel free to drop them in the chat. Or if you'd like, I don't think we have a lot of folks here today, so if you want to just unmute yourself to ask the question, you're welcome to do that as well. I'm going to take a sip of water in case anyone wants to drop anything. All right. Well, if you change your mind, if any questions come to mind as we go along, you are always free to drop that in the chat if you'd like, and then we can get to it later. All right. So part 2 of our training, composing your own core message. So this is one we'll get to try it out for ourselves. So a couple of things here. Number 1, we need a story. Describe an event or pattern of behaviors that exemplify your values and connect you to the community or the office that you're running for. So what is the story here? What is something that happened that moved you to run? And then we have your why, clearly stating your motivation for running. Your story could be like, I went to volunteer at my local food bank every day when I was laid off during the last recession. I was suffering, my family was suffering, but I also knew that there were people who needed help. And so I decided to dedicate my time to getting to know my community, volunteering at the food bank. And I realized that the city that I live in, there are pockets of food deserts, and that's not okay. And so your why. And so I decided to run for office because I wanted to make a change so that everyone in my community can have access to safe and healthy foods. I'm just making this up as we go. I'm sorry if this is a terrible, terrible core message, but you kind of get the gist. And then you have your promise, what you promise your policy priorities would be if elected. So if elected to represent you, I want to make sure that no kids at school leave school hungry. I want to make sure that everyone has access to safe and healthy, fresh foods. And I also want to make sure everyone has the education they need to know how to preserve and keep their foods at home, right? So that everyone can have access to these things and do it sustainably. So something like that. You have your story, how that story moved you to run for office, why you're running for office, and then if elected, what is your promise? So here is an example. We have a story. I grew up in El Paso and went to school here and graduated to become an immigration attorney. I've lost loved ones to the violence of America's broken immigration system. I'm running for Congress to advocate for common sense reforms to our immigration system. So boom, 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 very simple. What's your story? Why? And then what you're gonna do next. So something that I wanna note here also, the violence of America's broken immigration system. So these words that are being used here is really deliberate because when we hear the word violence, we see some image in our heads, right? It's different for everybody what you see. Maybe it's gun violence, maybe it's domestic violence, but the word violence evokes a very strong emotion within people. It's uncomfortable. And so when we use the word violence here, the violence of America's broken immigration system, we're making an assumption that people who are hearing this core message would agree that America's broken immigration system has a fundamental violence to it. And so this is a very smart way to message something because we're doing that education piece. We're encouraging people to make that link between immigration system and violence, right? And we're also we're value signaling. We're sharing to people this is what I think of the immigration system, and I think that you agree also. So a lot of the wording here is very strategic because you want to easily make that connection for people so they can process in their minds, okay, here is what I'm hearing from this candidate. Here are the images that I'm seeing in my mind from what they're saying. And now I'm uncomfortable and it's moving me to want to do something about it. That's what we're looking for. So your why is the main reason you are motivated to run for office and or get involved with a particular candidate issue. And a good reminder here is it doesn't specifically have to do with something you've experienced yourself. It could be something you witnessed, your mother trying to get surgery and her surgery was not being covered by her insurance and how frustrating and how betrayed she felt by the system as someone who has worked for 50 years of her life and is just trying to enjoy her twilight years, right? And so it doesn't have to be something you've experienced yourself. It just has to have some sort of strong emotional response, some sort of resonance. When we talk about our mothers, our families, keeping food on the table, that's something that all Americans can relate to. And there's a reason why the kitchen table is an imagery that's used in so many speeches by American presidents in history. So some things to think about when you're talking about your why. What is that image that comes to people's minds, um, and how is your why specifically related to your family or your community or things that you witness, not just the things that you've experienced yourself. Next is finding your why, common challenges. So here's some things that might be difficult. So number one, again, being overly broad or generic, we want to narrow things down as much as you can. Any reliance on contrast against opponent. So this is a tricky one. If you are running in a city where the incumbent has been repeatedly like failing the community, it's so easy to run on the platform of, well, I'm not that guy, I'm better than that guy. But the thing with human psychology is if you keep referencing that guy, all people will think about is that guy and then likely vote for them subliminally. So we need a platform that is based on who you are, not who you are not. There are some campaigns that do this strategically, like Zohran Mamdani, who just won the New York Democratic primary. He did do a little bit of I'm not that guy, but his own platform was so strong, his digital marketing was so top notch that it was okay because people already knew who he was. And so when he brought up Cuomo and all of the things that Cuomo has done in the past and been like, well, I'm not that guy, thank God. It was relevant, right? And it was also because he was being attacked by the other side saying, well, you've never done this, you've never done that. And so he was kind of like, yeah, I've never done that. I've never sexually harassed women, right? So there are things like that that will work, but it just can't be your campaign's core message. And then lastly, moving too quickly from me to we. So before you know people are fully on board with you, you don't say we. Uh, it can feel like disingenuous when someone is trying to they just met you at a party, right? And you start to act like kind of buddy buddy with this person that you just met. It can be a little bit uncomfortable. So that's the same with campaign speeches, from finding your why within your core message, knowing to start with me before you move into we, starting with I've discovered, I realized, I've seen to, and that's why we need to make a difference, having a little bit of space there. All right, we have a question from Mickey. Go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like. If it's an accident, that's okay. Or if you'd prefer to type your question in the chat, you can feel free to do that as well. All right, moving on then. We're going to take a little bit of time now to practice together. So using the formula of my story and then my why I'm running for office, and then my promise, what is my promise to voters? Try to summarize your core message in 3 sentences or fewer. So I'm going to go back to that slide with the example because I think that's helpful. Just remember it's story plus why plus promise. And then when you feel ready, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can type your messages into the chat. So I'll use this example, keep this example here, but no pressure to make it sound like this example. I'll give folks a couple minutes. All right, anyone brave who would like to share their core message with folks? We're not getting graded on it, so it really doesn't have to be perfect. Really just 3 sentences, 3 short sentences. All right. Well, no worries if not. I understand that it's very daunting to write things on the spot. I typically need like a couple hours to process something before I can write anything good. Okay, we have one from Jill in the chat. Jill, would you like to read yours out loud? You can say no.
No, it's fine. I'm here. I've been writing for the last couple of weeks, trying to
Right
get
there with the
shorter
Scott
and
plate on
shorter and
front of it.
shorter. It's
Oop.
crazy. So, part of my story is that I've lived in 8 places over the last 6 years,
Oh.
but nowhere has stolen my heart like Surf City. And on my Facebook page, I say every time I drive over that bridge, my heart skips a beat because I love it so much when I see the island, and I tear up too. And I just want to help ensure our town remains the vibrant, family friendly place. Our town spirit, I know that's 2 sentences. Our town spirit is worth protecting. And then my goal is to work diligently, thinking long term and big picture, working for and with all citizens to keep Surf City safe, family friendly, economically strong, and true to its unique beach vibe.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that with us. Can I ask how long have you lived in Surf City?
Oh, it's short, like a year and a half. I am not moving. When I move out of here, you'll see the red wagon with lights in front of my house now. I told my husband, this is like a dream. We moved here by accident. I did 2 years ago, I didn't even know this place existed.
I
And now
love
it's like I never moving again, ever.
I love that. So I think what you have here that's really unique is this perspective of an outsider who loves this town and is now an insider, right? And so finding that connection between because if we're thinking about like what will people say, people might say, well, you haven't lived here for long enough to know what we need, right? Playing the devil's advocate a little bit, knowing exactly how people might attack this core message. So doing that work ahead of time and trying to prepare for that preemptively will be kind of key here. So I loved what you said about how our town spirit is worth protecting. That's really beautiful. Um, And I think your promise of what your goal is to work diligently, think long term and big picture. Safety is a really key word here. People picture all kinds of things when you mention the word safety. So that's fantastic. Family friendly, economically strong, and true to its unique beach vibe, which is just the cherry on top. I love that. And so I think the way that you've crafted this, the tone also shows that you know your town very well. You know what type of words will resonate with them. So I think, yeah, this is such a fantastic start. And if you can come up with like the 3 sentence version of this, specifically sharing a story too of maybe like what is something that happened to you when you moved here that was so unique that you were like, yes, this is the place I want to stay. I think that will just be the final cherry on top of everything.
Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, we have one from Christina. Would you like to unmute yourself to read yours?
Yeah, I'm not actually running, but this was just sort of my idea if I was running for a seat.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a mom of a child who has struggled with mental health issues her entire life, and I know how it feels to beg an insurance company to improve a much needed medication over and over again. I'm running to make sure mental health treatments are available and treated as necessary.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Shame that you're not running because I think that would be a really wonderful platform to have. I think, especially here, the words mom, child, mental health issues, these things raise very specific images and also feelings in folks. Running on the platform of, a mom who wants change, that is so powerful. And knowing exactly what it's like to not get the care your child needs, a lot of mothers will be able to relate to that. So hypothetically, if you were running, I would say, mothers would be your biggest voter base, right? And then folks that you might need to convince might be moms who can afford all of these things. Um, so the question we would need to ask then is for moms who can afford these things and have never had an affordability issue, how can we still kind of touch upon that like motherly response to protect their children nonetheless? So this is beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I think we have time for one more share. So, Mike, if you'd like to read yours out loud, of course, no pressure, that would be great.
Sure. Hi. So mine is that I drive the same streets as you do in town, and I want our town to grow, but not at the expense of quality of life. I'm here to listen to what your concerns are about how to manage our future so that it keeps our small town feel while providing affordable housing and high quality services.
That's amazing. I love specifically here, I'm here to listen because the first thing people think of when they think of elected officials is like, oh, they're not listening to me. So one thing that's something that's very doable, right? Like just lending an ear. And something you could do for your campaign is hosting a town hall where you listen to everybody's concerns and then maybe having your team type up some notes to share with the community writ large with the questions of like, okay, so what's next? How do we address these concerns together? I'm here to support all of that. So that's fantastic.
Can I pitch a question your way?
Yes.
So there's a couple issues that we have. Like one is we had a failed occupancy tax on our ballot last year that I think a lot of people didn't understand that it wasn't a tax on residents, but a tax on hotel guests.
Hmm.
So like that's something that I want to talk about. But on campaign literature, I'm hesitant to put the word tax and voting for that when people might see it and think that it's a tax on them.
Yes. So a way I would frame that is, I'm assuming, do you have an Instagram account or some sort of social media account for this?
Not yet, no.
Not yet. So when you do, and if you do, and I think it's always a good idea, if you don't have the capacity to have like full-blown social media presence, at least have a Facebook group. Especially if your platform is I'm here to listen to you. Facebook groups are a great way to engage with the local community. And you can do some infographics dispelling myths, right? The number one might be like, what are taxes, right? And then maybe ending with tax is not a bad word. Um, and then sharing exactly how these taxes benefit the local community and then emphasizing that the taxes do not actually affect the local community immediately. So I think making that clear and making sure that the messaging there is concise can help.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all for your participation. I know we have a couple more here that unfortunately we won't have time to go through as a whole team, but I really recommend folks saving the chat at the end of the training just so you can have each other's first and last names, and also maybe connecting with each other on LinkedIn or offline, since many of y'all are running for the same cause, and it would be lovely to be able to do that collaboration together moving forward. All right, I'm going to go back to questions. Any other questions? Mike, thank you for yours. That was a really, really great question. I know that's a really tough one to message. Okay, I'm gonna move on, but feel free to drop anything in the chat if it comes up. Okay, so a quick note on practicing and refining your core message. One, we want to write down our biography. So the long version, the thing you would send your biographer and they would write a beautiful book about. This is basically journaling, right? Write down your story and then reflect on the reasons you are running and then start to narrow down, highlight and circle things. What is standing out as a story? What is standing out as a why? And then what is standing out as a practice? As a promise. And then the next step is to practice saying your core message until it comes so naturally to you, you can slip it into any single conversation. Practice a version that you share at the kitchen table with your relatives, right? Your uncle who's like, what are you up to? What are you up to now? Like disbelieving, right? What is the version of your core message that you would share with that uncle? You're going to have voters who are similar to that uncle. And then maybe a version that you would share in a social media post, a version that you would share in passing with a person in an elevator, right? We all know the elevator pitch. So that's tailoring to audience and platform, creating different versions of the core message that communicates the same feeling, communicates the same story, but tells it in different ways that's fitting to that specific audience or platform. And if any of that feels confusing, NDTC has some really great trainings, not facilitated by me, by other folks who are specific about how to talk to different platforms. How do you tailor copy to Facebook versus Twitter versus, X, and versus Instagram? So that could be a helpful training as the next step. And then make your message stand out. You always want to offer something new, something unique. You want to create a message that matters, tailor to the audience segment, meaning that specific group of folks that you want to talk to, and then just repetition and consistency. The people who repeat the message over and over again, they win. And when you repeat it, you don't have to say the same thing over and over again. It's more about different versions of the same story. And then offer something new. So what are some big ideas that you can bring? What are some policy priorities that are unique to you and has never been done before? And when you create a message that matters, it's real, it is relevant to folks, and it is resonant to their hearts. And when you tailor that core message, think about the platform. So is this on social media? Is this an in-person event? Is this a phone call? Who are you talking to? Is it the concerned mother? Is it the tired healthcare practitioner? Is it the grumpy uncle who is just waiting for his next break, right? And then the issue, what are the issues that are important to them, that person that you're talking to in the moment? If this person does not care about immigration, talking to them about immigration is probably not going to win their vote, right? What you need to do is tie immigration into an issue that they care about. Hey, did you know there are a bunch of myths about immigration specifically related to the economy? And if this person cares a lot about their job and cares a lot about, putting food on the table, if that's a priority area for them, then you tailor your immigration piece to their concern and making that connection for them. So, a couple of ways that you might need to tailor your core message. It could be direct voter contact conversations when you're doing volunteer outreach, town halls on issues, which is so big, especially for local elections. Any in-person time. I'm going to use Zoran as an example again, but when he walked the entire length of Manhattan, I think it was like the night before election night, that made national news, right? This is a local New York election, but it made national news because that day to day, that in-person contact with your voters in a digital world is so valuable and is almost like never been done before. Who knew you could talk to people in person? And then lastly, events with constituency groups or local organizations. So again, really valuing that in-person time you get with your constituents, that's very special. Okay, so we talked about repetition, we talked about consistency. Basically, just keep saying it over and over again until somebody believes it. Unfortunately, that's how propaganda happens, but it's also strategic storytelling. When people hear something enough, they just start to believe it. That's how our silly little brain works. So hopefully that works to your favor. And then tracking your message, setting up Google alerts, monitoring your social media, and then talking with your digital team or whoever is running your social media to understand how your posts are performing, how they're doing. Talk to your field team, get feedback from them and what they're seeing in the field. That's valuable information. And then connecting with close media contacts to access reaction to public communications. So, if you have any local newspapers in your town that people really trust, you want to build a solid relationship with those journalists, not necessarily being like, hey, can you write a story about me? But just take them out to coffee, ask them how their work is going, what are some issues that they care about, just like you would any other voter, and try to make those media connections because that will be very valuable. All right, well, that brings us to the end of our training. I hope at the very least you took away how powerful storytelling can be. Your core message is something that is shaped by who you are, what you've been through, who your voters are, what they've been through, and then how all of these issues connect together and the future we can have together if we work hard. And then understanding that your story plus your why plus your promise is going to be your core message. That's takeaway number 2. And then lastly, remember to be real, relevant, and resonant and repeat those messages. All right. We are at the end of our training. If you would like to access any NDTC resources, you can scan the QR code here. Again, the website is going to be traindemocrats.org/register to create your account to access even more trainings. I'm just going to leave it at this QR code here, but I will turn it back to Christy. Thank you all so much for your eager participation. It's been such a pleasure sharing space with you all today.
Thank you, Vanessa. This has been fantastic. Just a couple quick things from me. I'm showing on the screen right now the upcoming sessions in our candidate training series. Monday is digital and social media. We just added a session on public speaking skills. That one is probably going to be closer to an hour and a half rather than an hour. We've got to get out the vote session specifically as we lead up to the final phase of campaigns and things get more intense. And then the session that's called Election Night and Beyond. This is going to be with our voter protection director, giving advice to candidates on like, don't concede too soon. You might not know the winner of your race on election night, things like that. So that is coming up. If you have not yet taken us up on our offer for free access to Vote Builder, please do. This is a really powerful tool. When I ran for office, it cost me like $900 to buy something like this. So we offer the tool for free for people running this year, and there is also a series of trainings to help with that. I've also got a campaign plan template for you. Make a copy of this and start putting your custom information. This has been built out as every week we've had training content for candidates. 2 more things for you real quick and I'll let you go. We have a candidate Discord channel. Discord is similar to like Slack, it's a communications platform. That is a link to join the North Carolina Democratic Party's Discord. Once you get in there, go, hey, Christy, I'm a candidate. And I'll put you in the private group where candidates, campaign managers can commiserate and share best practices. Then the final resource I'm going to share here on Mondays, we are doing office hours for candidates and campaign teams. And it's basically 5 departments within the state party are there to answer questions, provide assistance, connect you with resources. The organizing director, data director, I'm there, digital director, and the comms director. So join us for that. I did see a question in the chat, a training on interviews and press releases, and unfortunately, I had to pull that one down. The comms director and I are struggling to find a time where we can do that. But NDTC has fantastic resources. So I used a lot of those resources when I ran Dig Around. They do some live trainings, and there are some self-guided trainings on their website as well. So leverage those resources in the meantime. With that, we're at time. Thank you so much for being here. I hope I see you at another training. And thank you again to Vanessa for guiding today's session. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Have a good one. Thanks.